600 square feet, somewhere between $80,000 and $200,000. In a city ordinance from 2003 that quietly made the one housing type most people search for in Shoreline, Washington, technically illegal to build. If you have been dreaming about a small cottage on a lot in Shoreline, the number that calculator websites give you is wrong, and the reason it is wrong is buried in the actual municipal code. Stay with me to the end of this video, because the workaround that makes this whole project legal in 2026 is not what most people expect, and skipping it could cost you a rejected permit application and months of delay. Before we get into the real numbers, hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell. Every week on Affordable Tiny Homes, we break down the real, unsponsored cost of building small, with real code citations and real 2026 pricing, no inflated numbers, and no sponsors telling us what to say. Let's get into it. Here is the twist most YouTube videos on this topic will never tell you. Shoreline used to have an actual zoning category called cottage housing. It allowed small detached homes clustered around shared open space, with individual units capped at 1,000 square feet of total floor area. Under that old code, at least half the cottages in a cluster had to keep their main floor under 650 square feet, and the rest could go up to 800. It was a genuinely elegant small home model. Then, on March 23, 2003, the city of Shoreline repealed the Cottage Housing Development Code entirely. As of 2026, you cannot walk into Shoreline's Planning and Community Development Office and apply for a cottage housing permit, because that permit type no longer exists on the books. So why are we making this video? Because the workaround the city actually offers today gets you almost the exact same outcome, a small, detached, cottage-style home on your existing lot, just filed under a completely different label. We'll get to exactly what that label is and how the size limits compare, but first, stick with me, because the cost breakdown depends entirely on which path you take, and most people budget for the wrong one. The label is Accessory Dwelling Unit, or ADU, and it lives in Shoreline Municipal Code Chapter 20.40, specifically 20.40.210, and Chapter 20.50. Here is what the current code actually allows. Shoreline permits 2 accessory dwelling units per lot, on top of your existing house, subject to the density calculations in the city's development table. Those ADUs can be detached, standing on their own like a true cottage, or attached, tucked into a basement or built above a garage. A detached ADU in Shoreline can go up to 1,200 square feet. If you want it larger than that, there is only one exception in the code, and it only applies if the unit shares a common roof with the primary residence and sits on its own separate floor. Now here is a detail that a lot of 2025 content already has wrong, so pay attention. Older local rules cap detached ADU height around 16 to 18 feet. That is no longer the ceiling. Washington's House Bill 1337 is now fully in force statewide, and it requires cities, Shoreline included, to allow detached ADU roof heights of at least 24 feet, not just 16. So depending on your roof pitch and how the city has updated its code to comply, you could legally be building a 2-story cottage-style ADU, not just a single-story one. The same state law also blocks cities from imposing stricter setbacks or parking requirements than the state standard if your lot sits within half a mile of a major transit stop, which describes a meaningful chunk of Shoreline given the light rail stations that opened along the corridor. Setbacks in general are still where people get tripped up. Structures over 200 square feet or over 10 feet tall generally need a setback from your property line, and the exact distance depends on your zone and, now, your proximity to transit under the new state rules. This is not a number you guess at. It is a number your city planner confirms against your specific parcel. Realistically, plan on 3 to 4 months from the day you submit your application to the day you get an approved permit in hand. That timeline depends on how complete your first submission is. So paying a designer who already knows Shoreline's checklist up front almost always pays for itself in saved review cycles. Now let's talk about what this actually costs, because the range you will find online is almost never built for a Puget Sound zip code. Nationally, tiny homes run $150 to $450 per square foot, with prefab kits coming in cheaper and fully custom builds at the top of that range. In Washington state specifically, a custom-built tiny home is closer to $200 to $400 per square foot, and that climbs fast once you cross into the greater Seattle labor market, where custom home construction alone runs $400 to $900 per square foot before land, design fees, or permits are even added in. Why the gap? Two words: labor and site work. Seattle area labor rates for electricians, plumbers, and finish carpenters are among the highest in the country, and skilled trade shortages have pushed subcontractor pricing up 20 to 30% compared to a few years ago. On top of that, site work in this region is genuinely unpredictable. A flat, easy lot might only need $30,000 in grading and utility connections. A sloped lot, and Shoreline has plenty of them, with retaining walls, drainage, and significant cut-and-fill work, can add $150,000 to $300,000 before a single wall gets framed. That is for a full-size custom home, but the same slope penalty applies proportionally to a cottage-sized ADU on a difficult lot. Design and architect fees typically run 8 to 15% of your total construction budget. For a modest $150,000 ADU build, that is $12,000 to $22,000 just for someone to draw the plans that get you through Shoreline's plan review. Then there are permit fees themselves. Under RCW 19.27.085, Washington State charges a flat surcharge of $6.50 per residential permit, plus $2 per additional unit beyond the first, and King County area jurisdictions bill plan review time at a standard hourly rate of $138. That sounds small next to a six-figure build, but complex ADU applications with multiple correction cycles can easily rack up several $1,000s in review hours alone. Before we get to full budgets, let's break down two categories that swing your total more than almost anything else: foundation type and utility hookups, because contractors rarely put these on the first page of a quote. A simple slab-on-grade foundation is your cheapest option and typically the fastest to build, but it limits future plumbing changes since everything is buried in concrete. A crawlspace foundation costs more upfront, generally adding several $1,000s over a slab for a cottage-sized footprint, but gives you access to plumbing and wiring for the life of the building. Pier or post foundations, common on slope Puget Sound lots where a full slab would require expensive grading, sit in between on cost, but only work well on certain soil types, which your geotechnical report will determine. Utility hookups are the other quiet budget killer. If your lot already has a water and sewer stub near the new ADU location, you might get away with $10,000 to $20,000 in connection costs. If the city requires an entirely new side sewer line, a new water meter, or a panel upgrade to support a second full kitchen and bathroom, that number can climb past $40,000 before you have laid a single stick of framing. Septic instead of sewer is not common inside Shoreline city limits, but if your parcel is on the edge of served areas, always confirm this with the city before budgeting, because septic system installation is its own five-figure line item. Let's put real numbers on two different paths, because the spread between them is enormous. And this is exactly where most first-time builders get their budget wrong. Budget 1. The lean path. A prefab-influenced 400-square-foot detached cottage ADU, kept simple, single-story, standard finishes, built on a flat lot with existing utility stubs nearby. At $150 to $200 per square foot for the shell and interior, you're looking at roughly $60,000 to $80,000 in construction alone. Add design fees around $8,000 to $10,000, a straightforward utility hookup around $20,000 to $30,000, and permit and plan review fees in the $1,000 to $3,000 range. All in, a realistic total lands between $95,000 and $125,000. Budget 2. The full cottage experience. An 800 to 1,200 square foot custom detached ADU, using that new 24-foot height allowance for a real second story, with higher-end finishes, a front porch, and cottage-style architectural details. At $350 to $500 per square foot given Seattle Metro labor pricing, construction alone runs $280,000 to $450,000. Layer and design fees of $25,000 to $45,000. Site work anywhere from $30,000 on an easy lot to well over $150,000 on a sloped one, utility hookups pushing past $40,000 if new lines are required, and permit review fees that climb into the several $1,000s range with multiple correction cycles. A realistic all-in total for this path lands between $350,000 and $600,000, which, yes, rivals the cost of building an entire second house. That gap from around $100,000 to over $500,000, all inside the same city, on the same size cap, is exactly why generic tiny home cost calculators are useless for a project like this. Your lot's slope, your finish level, and now your choice to use the new state height allowance do more to your final number than square footage ever will. Inside those per square foot numbers are 3 real finished tiers. Builder grade gets you laminate counters, stock cabinets, and vinyl plank flooring, and it sits at the bottom of every range we just quoted. Mid-range adds quartz counters, semi-custom cabinetry, and tile in the bathroom, and it is where most Shoreline cottage ADUs actually land once owners see the difference in person. High-end brings in custom millwork, full tile showers, and premium fixtures throughout, and it is what pushes an 800 square foot cottage all the way to that $450,000 construction number. The lesson here is simple. Your finish selections inside the house move your total by tens of thousands of dollars just as much as the square footage does. So lock in your finish package before you ask a contractor for a fixed bid, not after. Here is the part almost nobody plans for, and it is the reason so many Shoreline ADU budgets blow up by $10,000 to $15,000 partway through the project. Beyond your basic building permit, King County area jurisdictions also bill separately for things like stormwater engineering and facility inspection, school impact mitigation on new dwelling units, and land disturbance review if your project involves any grading or clearing. Here is the good news buried in that state law we mentioned earlier. Under House Bill 1337, local impact fees for schools, parks, and roads charged on an ADU are capped at 50% of whatever the city charges for a full single-family home. So these fees are real, and you should absolutely budget for them. But by law, they cannot legally be as painful as the fee your neighbor paid to build their main house. Utility connection charges for water and sewer service to a brand new detached unit are billed outside your general contractor's quote entirely and vary by exact address, which is exactly why we call them out separately back in Section 4. The fix is simple and free. Before you spend $1 on design, call Shoreline's Planning and Community Development Desk directly, or pull the current fee schedule from the city's website and ask specifically what applies to a new detached ADU on your parcel. That one phone call is the cheapest insurance you will ever buy on this project. Most owners are not paying 6 figures in cash, so it is worth naming the 3 most common ways this actually gets financed. A construction loan converts to a standard mortgage once the ADU is finished and inspected, and it releases funds and draws tide to build milestones, which lenders like because it limits their risk. A home equity line of credit against your existing house is faster to set up and gives you flexible access to cash, but the rate floats, so your carrying costs can move during a multi-month build. A cash-out refinance on the primary home rolls everything into one fixed-rate loan, which some owners prefer for predictability at the cost of resetting the terms on their existing mortgage. None of these is universally best. It depends on your existing rate, your timeline, and how much of this you're funding versus borrowing. So this is a conversation worth having with a lender before you fall in love with a floor plan. Here is the number that puts all of this in perspective. The average cost to build a full-size custom house in Washington state in 2026 sits between $500,000 and $1 million, not including land. In the Seattle metro area specifically, a mid-range 2,500 square foot custom home lands between $1.2 and $2.5 million once you include land, design, and construction together. Compare that to even the high end of our custom cottage ADU budget, sitting at roughly $600,000 for up to 1,200 square feet of brand new, code-compliant living space. Now potentially 2 full stories thanks to the updated state height allowance on a lot you likely already own. You are not paying for land twice, and you already have an existing structure carrying the address. That is the real financial argument for building small in a market like Shoreline. Not that it is cheap in absolute terms, because it is not, but that it lets you add real housing value without buying a second lot in one of the most expensive counties in the state. So that is the honest, code-cited 2026 cost of building a cottage-style home in Shoreline, Washington, from the ordinance that killed the word cottage in 2003 to the ADU code and a new state height law that quietly brought the idea back to the real dollar figures nobody puts in a calculator. If this helped you plan your own project, hit that like button, subscribe for next week's breakdown, and drop your target square footage in the comments. I read every one of them. Thanks for watching Affordable Tiny Homes, and I will see you in the next video.